Well, we're going to talk a little wrestling here today at 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse. And what we're going to talk about is some books that are supposedly out of print, but they're not. This is the typical eBay scumbag fucking move of grabbing something that people aren't aware may still be available and jacking it up to a fucking ridiculous price. I just got these in the mail today. This one I have read before, but it got soaked with water when I had the flood. J.J. Dillon's book, Wrestlers Are Like Seagulls. This is a really good one. I can speak from experience on that. As is that Wrestling Fake, The Bare Facts, Ivan Koloff's story. And another one I picked up, The Soley Chronicles, The Life and Times of Gordon Soley, one of the most famous wrestling announcers of all times. The Hard Way by Don Fargo, another crazy, I didn't read this yet, but a bunch of crazy shit going on with this dude back in the territory days. And Stan Hansen's book, The Last Outlaw. There's a lot of books on the site. The site is crowbarpress.com. You can get all these books way cheaper than you're going to get them on fucking eBay. $19.95 to $24.95 is what I saw, and I'll be ordering more. Someone was selling the Fargo book on eBay for $350. The Hansen book for $65. It gets stupider and stupider. This book here, though, True Lies and Alibis, Blackjack Mulligan's story, is definitely out of print. It was this one-shot deal. I salvaged it because it got wet because you can't get it anymore, and this fucker's going for like $300 now. It's an interesting book. I'll elaborate on Blackjack because I personally like the guy. I thought he was one of the toughest guys of all times. Blackjack was a Texan and didn't go to West Texas State. Like Tully Blanchard and the rest of those guys, Dick Murdoch, he didn't go to West Texas State. He learned his craft up in with Vern Gagne, I believe, and toward Canada. That's where he broke in. And he broke in under his real name, Big Bob Windham. He also was a former Marine and played for the NFL, the New York Jets, until he got hurt. Fellow player and wrestler Wahoo McDaniel told him he should get involved in the wrestling business, which he did. Blackjack was about 6'9" and the ideal guy to put against Andre the Giant. He was one of the first guys besides Don Leo Jonathan to work with Andre. Honestly, according to Blackjack, they didn't get along. There were several out-of-the-ring fights, one in a motel room where basically two of them were drinking and Andre wanted to fight, and basically they destroyed the hotel room. They went through a fucking wall into somebody else's room. There was another one where basically Andre dragged Blackjack and his buddy Dick Murdoch down to the beach and almost tried to drown them in the water. According to Blackjack, Andre wasn't a nice guy, but other people said he was. But then when you're in the ring with the guy all the time, things happen. I personally met Blackjack when I was doing the Rockaway Flea Market in the parking lot. I had this mug rack that was about 6 feet tall because I was selling coffee mugs at the time. And I turn around and there's this guy standing by the rack, towering it over, looking at some stuff. And I looked at him and I'm going, is that who I think it is? And he was wearing shorts, and I looked at his leg and he had a scar from his hip down to his knee. And then I knew it was really Blackjack Mulligan. So I, approached him and, said hi and, everything, complimented him that his son, Barry Windham, was working in Florida. Well, 2 weeks after that, he wound up in Florida with Barry, working with him and Dusty and all the people down there. The book is really interesting. It chronicles his life, his first shot in the WWE where he got that scar. He was wrestling Pedro Morales at the Boston Garden, and he was doing the whole thing about beating the shit out of Morales, having him down for the 2 count, and then jerking him up with his hair, and then starting all over again. Well, somebody jumped into the ring with a butcher knife coated with pig fat and stabbed him in the hip and drove it down to his knee. He almost died from that because the cut got infected. The fans followed him back to his hotel, where Bulldog Brower sat on the fire escape with a revolver holding them off. And then Brower drove him down to Jersey, where he went to a hospital and got stitched up and was out of action for quite some time. When he came back with Blackjack Lanza as a tag team, the Blackjacks. And they came in when business was a little bit down. So in his book, he says that Lou Albano walked up to him at a garden show and said, "There's some sheiks here that want to talk to you." And Jack's reply was, "Lou, you're drunk. Leave me alone." He goes, "No, no, 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 no." And then Arnold Skolin came down and told him the same thing. So then these guys showed up and they said they wanted to buy him for $50,000. That was a down payment. They wanted him to run shows over in the Middle East and would guarantee him $5,000 a week on top of the 50 they were giving him up. Well, being that things were not so great in McMahonville, he decided he was going to do it. So what he did was, they weren't going to let him out. So when he was wrestling, I don't know who it was, I think it was Dominic DeNucci and somebody else, he pulled DeNucci on top of him for the pin. They disallowed the pin, so the next night he did it again, so they finally let him go. So he said he was over there wrestling in the desert with people basically, coming in from killing each other during the day to sit around and watch these guys wrestle. His backer was the Sheik of Oman, I believe, and then something happened to the Sheik, and basically his crew was Johnny Rods, Jose Estrada, the Masked Superstar, Eddie Sharkey, and some other guys. And it got to the point where they said, "Are we going to make it out of here alive?" And then they basically, after the Sheik of Oman was incommunicado or whatever happened to him, they bailed. Blackjack went down to South Africa, where he was going to fight their champ, Jan Wilkinson, this 6'7", 300-something pound apartheid supporter. Basically, the guy was a complete racist, and Jack was always sympathetic for civil rights movements. He wasn't a racist. He had friends that were black. He wrestled against guys that were black. He put guys over that were black in their own territories. So he wasn't happy with this guy, but what happened was he was jet lagged and the guy beat him in the first encounter. So what Jack wanted to do was beat him in Cape Town, his hometown. So he basically beat him against whatever was going on and refused to drop the belt back to him, saying that, oh, he'll drop the belt, but it's got to be a black wrestler. So he kept this up for a year and finally dropped the belt back to him. He came back to the States. Like I said, I met him, on one of his last runs with Andre at the Garden, and then he wound up in Florida. And what he did was, he had wrestled a guy named Ray Candy, who was a mid-card guy in his hometown, and Ray was a little tweaked because Blackjack was only going to be in there for a while. And he said, no, he goes, there ain't going to be a problem, Ray. I'm going to make you look good on the way out. So they were in Florida, and him and Dusty brainstormed, and they took Ray Candy and another mid-card wrestler, Leroy Brown, and renamed them Kareem Mohammed and Elijah Akeem, and formed the Zambo Express, a bunch of, a group of radical black wrestlers who were sick of being bothered by the rednecks, and went into great detail about guys like Mulligan and Rhodes kicking in their doors in the middle of the night and dragging them out and shit like that. So they created quite a feud and drew a lot of money. And as a matter of fact, I was at one of them. I was at the Eddie Graham Sportatorium on vacation when it was Blackjack Mulligan and Dusty Rhodes against the Zambo Express, managed by gentleman Jim Holiday, and the special referee was Big Daddy. Well, the Zambo Express left the heroes laying. And I don't know what happened. I believe Leroy Brown passed away prematurely, and then Ray Candy was still Kareem Mohammed, and he hooked up with Ed the Bull Gantner as part of Sir Oliver Humperdinck's shock troops. Blackjack did make a return to the WWE. Wasn't happy with the way things were. He was supposed to get into a feud with Cowboy Ron Bass, but then Pat Patterson made a comment about, he ought to lose some weight, so Jack quit. Jack had health problems. Another thing was, he was Ric Flair's next door neighbor down in the Carolinas when they were working down there as partners and as opposition. So he had a long history with Flair, a long friendship with Flair, and Barry Windham, of course, hooked up with Flair and became one of the Four Horsemen. So, unfortunately, Jack passed away a few years ago from complications of heart disease. Mike Rotundo married Barry's sister, Stephanie, and they had two children that became pro wrestlers, Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas. Unfortunately, last year, Bray Wyatt passed away from heart disease. It was a fucking terrible thing. It just happened, right after he did an interview about, his Uncle Barry, and Barry was having problems and stuff like that. So, unfortunately, he passed away too. But the Windhams are a legacy, and a great legacy at that. And it's just sad, you know, Barry's not in good shape health-wise, but he appears at conventions here and there. Mike, I don't know. Mike Rotundo, I don't know what he's doing right now. But like I said, if you can find this book under $300, you're lucky. It's a great read. But as far as the other books, www.crowbarpress.com. They're all there. They're all good. And these are outside of the WWE. They're not written under Vince McMahon's supervision where they got to make Vince look good. No, these are hard written about the life in wrestling in general. And talking about Vince McMahon, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the situation now. I never liked Vince. I think Vince fucked up wrestling the way I knew it, killed the territory system, screwed a lot of people, and now he's accused of sexually trafficking somebody. My problem with the whole thing was it was supposed to be a non-disclosure agreement for $3 million, but Vince only paid $2 million, so she went public with it. How it's going to play out, I don't know. All I know is the McMahons are no longer connected with the WWE, period. And this isn't the first person Vince has fucked over, and there'll probably come out a lot of stories. There was a lady wrestler named Ashley Marizano, I believe her name was, who was raped on a Middle East tour by a couple U.S. officers. And when she went to McMahon with this, he said, "You don't say anything, you take one for the team." Well, unfortunately, she committed suicide. So Vince, like I said, never liked you. Hope you go down hard. And you ruined wrestling the way a lot of us knew it. And you ruined a lot of lives. Whether you want to admit it or not, you fucked over a lot of people. And it's about time you got what you deserved. You're the wrestling version of Donald Trump, who was actually a good friend of yours. So fuck you both. And I hope you actually pay for what you did this time instead of buying your way out of it. So again, great books, crowbarpress.com. Check them out. So that's our show for today. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you on the flip side.